if you're talking about the election for the next president of Taiwan, most people predict that Taiwan will win. And all of the polls show that she's leading by double digits or even leading by 20%. Well, but it's less clear about the other races for the legislators. In some districts, it's a landslide, but in other places, in other districts, it's usually a close race. And of course, you could conduct surveys and polls to have people state whether or not whether or not they would vote, who they would vote for. Economists has come up with the idea that why don't we let the market solve this? What do we mean by market solving this? So economists already know that the market has one very interesting property, which is that it would actually aggregate information. If you think of the simplest market where there are buyers and sellers, there's the two-sided market, there's asymmetric information on each side. The sellers know only their own costs. They do not know other sellers' costs. They do not know the valuations of the buyers. The buyers don't know other people's valuation, and they don't know other the seller's costs at all. However, the market somehow aggregates this information because if you are a buyer, seeing the market price, it's the high valuation buyers that would buy at this market price. The low valuation guys would not want to buy. As a seller, if your cost is above the market price, you would not want to sell. So it's the low-cost sellers that are going to sell. So it's as if the market knows all of this information. And so the outcome is efficient. Yeah, so the question here is that can we use this information aggregation property of the market and apply this to make better predictions? In more complicated situations, well, the value of the item is uncertain. So for example, if you want to bid for an antique online, you don't know if it's fake or not. And if you want to buy stocks, the value of the stock could vary in the future. Well, you know Apple is so good now, but will it still be that valuable 5 years from now or 2 years from now? Well, you don't know. There is, in finance, what we call the efficient market hypothesis, which states that all information about this stock or this asset is already contained in the market price. And so revealing this information does not affect the price. If I have insider information or private information, and I see the stock price way too low based on my information, I should buy like crazy. But my purchasing behavior would pull up the price. If I think this price is way too high, I should be able to sell or short sell this stock, but my trading activity will affect the market price. Because of this, so in equilibrium, what's going to happen is that, well, this adjustment will already take place, and eventually, so the current price already reflects all of this behavior, all of this information, and so the final price should already incorporate everybody's private information. Revealing this private information does not change the market price. It's as if the market already knows this information. There is a reason why this is called the efficient market hypothesis, not the efficient market theory or law, because this is a hypothesis. However, it is true that there is this tendency that, yes, so if there is private information that you believe is true, your trading behavior should affect the market price. And this should already be reflected in the current equilibrium market price. Okay, so if that is true, then we say, hey, how about this? Knowing that markets aggregate information, let's try to gather other information using a market. For example, if you have a tradable permit market, even though I don't know who are the people who need these permits, but the market will correctly allocate these permits in the hands of those who need it the most. But if you want to predict something new, well, you have to create a market for these things. So in the case of events, the way to create a market is you create what we call event futures. You could have, say, a stock for Taiwan, a stock for Zhu Lilun, and a stock for Song Chuyu, where Taiwan stock will only pay you $100 if Taiwan wins. Zhu Lilun stock will pay $100 only if Zhu Lilun wins, and Song Chuyu stock will pay $100 if Song Chuyu wins, and zero otherwise. So this is what we call the winner-take-all market. A similar market could be, say, but not the same, is what we call vote share market. So say we'll pay $50 if Taiwan wins 50% of the vote share. And we'll pay $1 if, like, say, Song Chuyu gets 1% of the vote share. So these are two possible different futures. Suppose you are in this winner-take-all market. Taiwan stock is at $10, and you know that you can get paid $100 if Taiwan wins. Would you want to buy this stock at $10? Well, that depends on your belief of how likely Taiwan's going to win. If your belief is Taiwan's going to win with probability 70%, then expected-wise, well, each stock is worth $70 because there's a 0.7 chance you get 100. So you should buy this stock like crazy if it's only at $10. Of course, if it's $100, then you might not want to buy it. So what this means is that the stock price for the winner-take-all market reveals the market belief about how likely is this candidate going to win, or this event, how likely is this event going to be realized. Similarly, for a vote share market, if Taiwan stock is priced at $40, that means that, but if you believe Taiwan is going to win 50% of the vote share, then you have a chance of arbitrage by buying this stock, because then you believe that this stock will eventually be worth $50 after this event is realized. But if it's only priced at 40 now, well, you should buy it. So what this means is that the vote share futures gives us the market belief about what is the vote share predicted for each of the candidates. Of course, you could also ask people who you would vote for, or who do you think will win? And so, of course, one question is, are these better than doing a survey? If you sample people, say using a phone survey, what happens? Some people may not be available, be reachable by a landline. Most surveys do not call cell phones because it's too expensive, and there's no phone book for cell phones. You survey this, some people might decide to decline to answer. There's this joke that a lot of people, when they get this survey phone call, they say, "喂，你好，我们这里是 TVBS 民调中心," and then they would either hang up immediately or fake an answer because they do not trust the other side. And well, the correct way to solve this is to correct for these biases by trying to wait to correct for these biases. The pollsters in Taiwan do not do that. And even if they do that correctly, well, this correction is ad hoc and based on experience. So like people claim that the 2016 election is so special that no other past experience is the same. In that case, then you might not be able to make good corrections. What is more, when you do a survey, each sample counts as one data point. But wait a minute. In the event prediction situation, some people might have more information than others. Well, your sister, who never looks at politics, might have no information about these candidates. And she might say, hey, wait a minute. Oh, so this is the most handsome candidate. I'll just vote for him. Well, but other people who might read the news, who might go to online forums and collect information, they might have more information than other people about who is more likely to win. In a usual survey, each person's survey response counts as one data point equally. So you're not weighting correctly in the sense that you should give people who have more information higher weight. So the first thing is that the survey company correctly adjusts for these possible biases, then you should be able to solve the problem. However, in Taiwan, most people do not adjust. Well, even if you adjust, this is an ad hoc adjustment. So the alternative proposal is to set up this event future market, the prediction market, and then have people voluntarily jump in and trade when they think the price is different from their private information. Well, we are not surveying people equally as either, because it's people who hold different beliefs or more private information. It's those people who are trading on the market. But what this means is that you are putting more weight on people who have more information. So it could be the case that it's only there are only 200 active traders on the prediction market, but these traders, who are these guys? These are the people who are active in online forums, who read the news, who ask around, who have the private information about how likely is this event going to occur. And if that's the case, you are doing the right weighting on taking into account these people who have better information. Of course, this really depends. For example, if you set up a prediction market for who will win the next Nobel Prize in economics, there are only a handful of insiders who have information about this. It's the committee that selects the next prize. And of course, if they trade on the prediction market, they will get fired. And so there is a reason why the prediction market for the next winner of the Nobel Prize is not that accurate, because there's not much information to aggregate from, because most people to just have wild guesses. Well, it could be the case that if you are a local person, you might hear how your neighbors you might know your neighbor's view about different candidates, and you might go online and check the news and so on. So there are some people who are more informed than others. And a prediction market can actually aggregate these people's information more accurately. In the world, there are a lot of prediction markets. The most famous one is the Iowa electronic market. This was established by the University of Iowa, and they play real money. It's not counted as gambling because they cap the win-loss at $500. But it's purely academic. So if you want, you can go to their website and take a look. In the old days, there's trade sports. And so this is a betting market on sports. They set this up in Ireland because that's where gambling is legal. InTrade eventually closed down, partly because their CEO first climbed the Mount Everest and died on the mountains. And then there were some other problems on InTrade, and so it currently filed for bankruptcy and ceased to operate. However, one of the founders of InTrade TradeSport now restarted TradeSports, trying to go back to predicting sport events. Now TradeSport is back, but InTrade is gone. Yeah, so it used to be a replacement, but now it's gone. Another very famous prediction website is Hollywood Stock Exchange. This is a website to predict movie box office. One thing we know for the movie business is that it's very difficult to predict how good a movie will open. How good will this movie fare? There are a lot of these big hits that became so crappy. Star Wars 7, Force Awakens, just opened. And of course, people expect it to be very good, but how good is a problem? And so people even set up this Hollywood Stock Exchange hoping to predict the outcome. Unfortunately, they use play money because it's not allowed to use real money in the US. So let's take a look. Yeah, so this is a screenshot for the Iowa electronic market. Here's trade sport in the old days. This is Hollywood Stock Exchange. In Taiwan, what do we have? So somehow the physics department of Academia Sinica has Taiwan Political Exchange. National Zhengzhi University has the Prediction Market Center. They couple with X Futures to start 未来事件交易所 X Futures. Recently, the former CEO of X Futures started a different 智慧交易所 Smart Exchange. Unfortunately, all of these are play money because it's not real money is not allowed in Taiwan. It's considered gambling, or you're basically setting up a futures that's not approved by the authorities. Are these accurate? Well, there are claims to show that the accuracy goes up to close to 80% 1 month before the event happening. This is done by the NCU Prediction Market Center, even though this is fake, this is play money. Let me show you some real money things. So for reasons I don't know, the Iowa electronic market has a real money prediction market for the 2000 Taiwan presidential election. If you remember, that's the most craziest election ever. There was Lian Zhan versus Chen Shui-bian versus Song Chu-yu. And nobody knew who was going to win. It's also during that incident, that election, that one day before voting occurred, so somebody came out to say, oh, so Lian Zhan is leading and so on. And it turned out to be a false claim, that eventually they decided to ban posters and survey announcements within the last 10 days of the election, which I think is a wrong policy because, I mean, well, you should have more accurate information to come out to balance the false claims, but they basically banned all information aggregation. But anyway, so let's look at how the prediction market of real money in Iowa. I mean, this is crazy, right? I mean, you have a prediction market in the US, in Iowa, to predict Taiwan's election results. So here is 0 to 1. So if eventually this candidate gets, say, 40% of the votes, you would get 40 cents of US dollars. Here's the timeline on the horizontal axis, starting from December 1999 all the way up to March 14. Here, the line colors are wrong. So Chen Shui-bian is blue, Lian Zhan is red, green is Liao, I think, and then purple is Song Chu-yu. So it used to be Song Chu-yu on the top until there was a scandal of him which broke out, Xingpiao An. After that, Chen Shui-bian was on top. The blue line is on top, and then Song Chu-yu went down. Lian Zhan is down here as well. Going deep into the campaign in February, I mean, basically everything's garbled together. So all of the vote share prices are close to 33 cents. Nobody knows who's going to win. Until early March, so somebody announced, does Taiwan want to go up or go down? 向上提升 or 向下沉沦. The blue line went up. The red line went down. So you know who is going up. So people are strategically voting candidate, the second place, and abandoning the third place. The final price of 39, 38, and 25 is almost exactly the final vote share that realized in this election. It's even clearer with the winner-take-all market. So the winning probability of the three parts was always 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 until the announcement of, do you want to go up or go down? Which, okay, now the colors are correct. The green line is 陈水扁, blue line is 连战, red line is 宋楚瑜. So the green line soared immediately after this go up or go down news event. And which line went down? It's the blue line, 连战, that went down. This looks so reasonable that, well, it's as if the US prediction market in Iowa correctly predicts the events and the winning probability of the Taiwanese 2000 presidential election. What about 319? In 2004, there was this gunshot right before the election day. The biggest question everybody wanted to ask is, who would have won if there were not this incident? And the challenge is this. So what we do know is that this event will affect voter turnout, because voters that are sympathetic to the person who got shot will come out and vote. The other camp, voters of the other camp, will say, hey, wait a minute, they're all coming out. We should also turn out as well. So voter turnout for both camps should both go up. The question is, which one is going up more than the other side, and that could affect the final outcome. So another possibility is that the middle side, the undecided, will say, oh, I'm sympathetic to the person who got hurt, and so I would vote for them. Or it could be that I realize that they are strategically faking this incident, and so I would want to vote for their opponent. Again, this could go both sides. So it's an empirical question. What would the outcome have been without this event? Unfortunately, Iowa electronic market did not run a 2004 Taiwan election prediction market. In fact, the Taiwanese market was one of the few foreign election markets that they actually ran. So, but Taipei Stock Political Exchange did run a prediction market during the 2004 election. Warning, this was a play money market. Take it with a grain of salt. This is the outcome. So during the last 10 days leading up to the event, the green are Chen Shui-bian and the blue are Lian Song-pei. And you see that it's actually pretty murky here, where everything is mixed together. But if you look at the last week, most of the time the green is actually on top of the blue. And it's only after the gunshot that this gap converged. So if you really believe in this data, well, you should say that, yeah, so Chen Shui-bian was leading even before the event. And even though it boosts turnout on both sides, well, the gap of the lead was narrowed to what we see in what actually happened. But I do have to say that this is a play money market. You could imagine possible problems here. One thing I want to note is this. So the Taiwan Political Exchange has this very interesting play money market that they actually give out cash prizes to the top 10 traders. So at some sense, it's not really play money. It's this tournament that, so if you trade and perform well, you get a cash prize. But if you are ranked number 11, you drop out of the list, then you get 0, just like the worst trader. Here you can imagine there could be some interesting or crazy behavior here. If I get 0, regardless of being number 11 and number 1011, once I drop out of the top 10 list, the only way to get money is to try to get back on top. And so you could induce very risky betting on the small unlikely events that everybody will lose money and only I would gain, and in order for me to get back into the top 10 list. However, I mean, so to take this result with a grain of salt, but it is an interesting result, even if this is play money or this a very special tournament scheme. Similarly, they also ran, the same market also ran 2000 Congress election. If you add up the green camp, DPP and Thailand versus KMT and PFP, you will realize that even though back in 2004, people were talking about the green camp overtaking the blue camp, well, the prediction market is just pretty stable, saying no, that's not the case. At least back in 2004, that's 10 years ago, well, it was never the case that the green camp is going to overtake the blue camp. The mayoral election for Taipei and Kaohsiung. So this is Taipei City. Frank's share is down here at 40% versus Hao Longbin when Hao Longbin first ran for mayor. And Song Chu-yi is just down here at 10% throughout the entire campaign. So nothing really changed there. But Chen Ju versus Huang Junying was almost always a 50-50 race. Although if you match the events, you could actually see how different news events affected the moving average of Chen Ju's stock and the Huang Junying stock. The same website also ran this prediction market for how many seats would the blue and the green camps earn. It was pretty stable, even though the outcome was really crazy because it was, I think, 28 versus 82. Although the prediction market was 44 versus, I think, 66 or something. And this one is the 2008 election where Ma Ying-jeou won and regained power for the KMT. And so here you see 60 versus 40, which was almost pretty stable. You can go on to other by-elections after this event. And so you can move on to the by-elections of the legislators when the DPP started to gain one seat and another in legislature. And this one is the prediction market for whether or not Ma Ying-jeou would win again in 2012. Here, the y-axis is the time frame. And the fun thing is that immediately after the Typhoon Morocco hit Taiwan, it started to plummet. It went back up again, but eventually gradually declined all the way down, even up to a point where it's below 50. People believe that Taiwan might have a chance in 2012. So this is when, so Taiwan restarted DPP. Okay, so let me get to some of the fun things. So so these are some of the by-elections. This is actually what I studied in 交易所. So we're going to X futures. This is completely play money. And so some of them are accurate, like predicting like Chen Ming-wen winning the by-election. In this crazy race, so Huang Renyu did win against 3 other KMT candidates. This is in Taoyuan. The fun thing is this one. So this was Xiao Bikim versus Wang Tingshen. So it started out as a 50-50 race, although Xiao Bikim went up to 55 or something, and Wang Tingshen went down to 40. And the last day, there was this divergence, but actually Wang Tingshen won. There could be some last-minute manipulation going on here in this market. And because it's a play money market, so we can't really, we're not really sure. Even though the other elections, like say, nobody predicted that Peng Shaojing would win, but he actually won. There is known evidence that sometimes X futures was manipulated. Actually, in some of the times, it actually says, sorry, we have to stop operating. You suspect what's going on. Well, the Taipei's political exchange came to fill out this, especially in 2010 when there was this mayoral election. Let me go all the way down to what happened in the prediction there. If you remember, in 2010, this is when, so Hao Longbin ran for re-election, and Tsai Ing-wen faced Zhu Lilun in New Taipei City. And it was James Hu Zhiqiang was in Taichung facing Su Jiaquan. And the prediction there was that Taipei, let me show you the prediction here. Yeah, okay, it's here. So yeah, so in Taipei City it was 49.8 versus 50.9, so that it's, back then it was Su Zhenchang running for Taipei City, but it was basically 50-50. This did not realize. In New Taipei City, it was Zhu Lilun was ahead. Same for Taichung, but in Kaohsiung and Tainan, it was Chen Ju and Lai Qingde was leading by a lot. The prediction market was lopsided. And the fun thing is there was a gunshot before that. If you remember, Lian Shengwen got shot the day before this election. One interesting question that you might want to ask is, hey, so how did that change the ex-future markets? And we can also look into the data of that, even though this is play money. What makes a prediction market accurate? The key thing here is that the market only aggregates all information of the traders that participate in this market. So if there is a barrier of entry so that people who have private information cannot enter the market, then you will not be aggregating accurately enough. Also, if there are credit constraints, even if I have a lot of private information, I could have credit constraints. I cannot buy as much as I want, or I cannot short sell. These restrictions in the trading rules could also limit how accurate the market aggregates information. And of course, the other thing is that actually in a lot of these markets, the biggest problem is liquidity. It's only the most popular markets, like on the presidential campaign, that people actually trade. In a lot of these local elections, nobody is trading at all. And so if there's no liquidity, then it's unlikely that market prices would actually reflect all of the information. So what we see here is that markets do aggregate information, and the prediction market uses this fact to predict future events. However, well, what this means is that this is not a real crystal ball that somehow is magic. It's just that it aggregates information. So the ability to aggregate this information does depend on a lot of details of how this prediction market is designed. If there are entry barriers, if there's no incentives for people to trade according to their information, then the prediction power would actually be reduced. And so there could be a lot of open questions to talk about here. For example, does play money or real money matter here? My guess is if there's manipulation, there could be a big problem. Because if it's play money, it's very easy to manipulate the market. I can just have 1,000 students and just go and buy for my candidate. The price of the last 3 days of trade for Tsai Ing-wen to win the new Taipei City election in 2010 was 43, 48, and 49 versus Zhu Lilun, which dropped from 57 to 51 to 50. So actually, the gunshot actually favored Tsai Ing-wen instead of Zhu Lilun, partly because this showed how bad the police were in New Taipei City. But the fun thing is that, yeah, so Hao Longbin did get a boost from 48 to 53 to 55 versus Su Zhenchang dropped from 51 to 49 to 48. Also, Hu Zhiqiang went up from 65 to 76 to 73 versus Su Jiaquan, which went from 31 to 36 to 29. So there was this gunshot effect, but it may not be in the direction that people usually think. Okay, so let's look at 2012. So this is Ma Ying-jeou versus Tsai Ing-wen in 2012. This is the last presidential election. And the fun thing is this. If you look at this, well, Ma Ying-jeou is pretty close to 50%. Tsai Ing-wen was above, but then went to 40%. until there's a boost here where when Song Chu-yi jumped in, well, Ma Ying-jeou actually went down. So this is the vote share prediction. The winner take all is even more clear, where it was always 50% until somehow Song Chu-yi jumped in and then Ma Ying-jeou plummeted. So it's likely that people were thinking that Tsai Ing-wen would have won in 2012. So one question you could ask is, wait a minute, so why didn't Tsai Ing-wen win? Somehow the Central Election Committee decided that you are not allowed to announce the prediction market during the last 10 days, viewing the prediction market as a poll, which is actually not true, because I mean, this is not a survey, this is a prediction market. But they did this so the X futures prediction market was forced to close the prediction market to the public in the last 10 days before the election. Result is 10 days before the actual election day of 2012. And if you remember what happened during the last 10 days, well, China pressed a lot of Taiwanese businessmen to come out and support, to support Ma Ying-jeou, saying that only Ma Ying-jeou can keep the Chinese-Taiwan relationship stable and so on. And so there were some claims that that there was a change in the last 10 days that is not reflected in the public prediction market. I'm not sure. I mean, well, we don't have the data, so we don't know, unfortunately, because of this legal restriction, which I think is actually wrong, because, well, if we had that data, we could actually see if there was a change in the market price to see if these hypotheses were real or not. Now we can only speculate. But of course, one interesting question that I don't know is would the prediction market be accurate this time for this election? I don't think the 2016 presidential election of Taiwan is that interesting, because almost all of the predictions are Tsai Ing-wen's going to win. A more interesting question is whether or not the Green camp will command a majority of the Congress or the legislative yuan in Taiwan. That's something that different people have different opinions upon. And of course, an obvious thing that the prediction market can help us is to show if whether or not this event will happen or not. If you want, you should go and check on X futures now and then see if this prediction is realized on January 16th.